All right, I'm going to get very excited about this upcoming segment. Our next guest is the research director at the Media Research Center, where he evaluated the media's coverage of President Trump versus their coverage of Democratic nominee Joe Biden. In his 3-month research between March and April and May, the Media Research Center tallied the amount of time ABC, CBS, and NBC evening news spent on covering Biden's biggest scandals or gaffes. So let's start with the sexual assault allegations made by Biden's former staffer, Tara Reade. All three of these spent a total of 23 and a half minutes. And when it came to Biden's "you ain't black" comment and outrageous claim that real African Americans should only vote for him, it received a whopping total of 3 minutes and 16 seconds of network coverage. But that's not all. When it came to news that Biden requested the unmasking of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, you know that we've spoken about this in the past. It's that system by which, or that process by which a government official figures out who somebody is in some of these foreign surveillance things that it gets picked up in the warrants. It drew a mere 55 seconds on ABC, 7 seconds on CBS, and not a single second on NBC. In other words, the mainstream broadcasters allotted a total of 62 seconds. And for those of you math challenged, that's 1 minute and 2 seconds. So why the lack of scrutiny? And what does that mean for the 2020 election? Well, joining us now is the man himself, the research director that we just spoke up, Mr. Rich Noyes. Rich, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
You know, the thing that I love so much about reading the stuff from the Media Research Center is that, as the press likes to talk about it, it's just the facts, right? You can't spin the numbers, or you can spin them, but you can't deny them. Let me show you another great statistic that you guys put up there in terms of the total amount of time that was covered out of each candidate positively and negatively. So first, let me show you, well, I don't need to show you, you know it, but from President Trump, these three sources spent 445 negative statements about Trump, 29 positive, which is a total of 474. Now, here's the real interesting chart. Let's go to Biden's, because the thing that I think is so fascinating out of the timeline that you covered, which was still March, April, and May, is that there were 51 negative statements and 34 positive statements. Why that's interesting to me is that those were the times period in which all of these scandals occurred, Rich. And yet what this really shows isn't just how the media covers one versus the other, but what they want to ignore. And in this case, they want to ignore Joe Biden's gaffes.
That's right. I mean, this is a microcosm of how the larger liberal media enterprise is covering this 2020 campaign. This is ABC, CBS, and NBC, but you could find the same thing. Just spent a lot more time doing it on CNN and MSNBC and all the big newspapers, the wire networks. This is going to be a campaign, as far as they're concerned, about criticizing and trashing President Trump, and they're going to be ignoring as much as possible anything controversial involving Joe Biden. They're basically ignoring Joe Biden. Joe Biden is sitting in his basement reaping the benefit of a liberal media that's going to do all the negative campaigning, all the dirty work for him. And so far, you know, if you look at the polls, he's got a slight edge. It might be working. You know, we'll see what happens if this can sustain him all the way through the fall. But right now, the liberal media are trying to run and defeat President Trump for re-election.
You know, Rich, something I think is really interesting, a lot of what we heard about last week was President Trump's rally in Tulsa and the concern about coronavirus and the size of it back and forth. But when it came to Saturday and actually came to the president's actual speech, we barely heard anything from the media. And your research center shows that. I want to pull this up. You show how much was actually showed on CNN. 3 minutes and 25 seconds of Trump's speech, 3 minutes and 45 seconds on MSNBC, and then Fox showed the entire speech. But I think this shows why not.
By the way, I just want to make sure we're all clear here in the audience. Newsmax covered the whole thing too, right? So I know I'll overlook the fact that you left it out, but we made sure we covered it from start to finish as well. So I'm helping you out with the research there, Rich. Sorry,
That's true. We did cover it. No, yeah, great ad, great addition. But I think the point here, Rich, is it's interesting. You want to talk about the whole thing, but then you don't allow your viewers to even see the speech. So why scream so loud about this issue and then not even allow the viewers to see it?
Well, I mean, they built a whole Saturday night program around this. I mean, they brought their top stars back. I mean, Wolf Blitzer was anchoring CNN. He normally doesn't do that on a Saturday night. And yet, you know, the whole evening was about the Tulsa speech, and yet they would not show the Tulsa speech. I mean, this was a 101-minute speech. It went on and on and on. There was all kinds of things that they're talking about and chewing over the next day, but they wouldn't let their audience see it. And if earlier in the week, Joe Biden gave a speech that nobody remembers, and yet they covered it in full. 18 minutes on MSNBC, 15 minutes on CNN, and 18 minutes on Fox. Fox is the only one of those three. I don't know about Newsmax, but that is consistent and showing the candidates when they speak. The liberal networks will show you one candidate when he speaks, and they will not show another candidate when he speaks, even if he's the incumbent president of the United States. All they're going to do is just make fun of him and call him names while he's on the podium talking.
Yeah. Rich, we're out of time, but I'll tell you, I hope to have you back because I really wanted to get to this softball interview that ABC had last night with John Bolton. We're going to discuss this later with our company, but it was unbelievable, the lack of pushback that Martha Raddatz had for John Bolton. It was almost like ABC was giddy because he was so anti-Trump. It was fascinating to me. And again, this goes to your whole point. It's not just what they ask, it's what they don't. And last night, it was nothing negative, nothing to push back on what he said. So thank you. And thank you for sharing all these stats. We look forward to having you back as we break down how the media continues to cover this election as we head towards November.
We'll be here. Thank you.
All righty. Well, still ahead, we've got political strategist Dick Morris here to discuss President Trump's Tulsa rally. And we're talking to presidential historian Craig Shirley about that book that John Bolton put out. And later, Trump senior advisor Jenna Ellis talks about the White House's reaction to Bolton's book. All that and a lot more coming up.